From an ecofeminist perspective, I think we focus on the need for both top-down and bottom-up, with a preference for the bottom-up, with a preference for communities getting involved in determining what their needs are, and particularly how to support care. Care is a really important part of a vision for an ecofeminist city. It's the center around which everything else kind of revolves. A number of different things come from an ecofeminist approach. The first one would be investing in infrastructure, and that can be both built and social infrastructure. Built meaning the way that we organize care, the provision of care, whether it be buildings that offer different forms of care services, whether it be child care, elder care, care for vulnerable people who need to get out of the heat or out of the cold, for example. In addition to that, those buildings have to have investment of social services, social infrastructure that can support various needs in communities, needs for care. We all need care. One of the first principles of ecofeminist politics is that, you know, dependence is inevitable. Dependence on each other, dependence on nature. And so we need to build cities that take that dependency into account and ensure that everyone's needs are met. Governments need to invest money, but communities also need to put pressure on governments. Never think that these things can be done on a volunteer basis, because when we think about who's going to do it, given the way social roles still exist in our societies, it will often be the women who do that work for free. We found that a lot of sort of non-feminist Green New Deals focused on things like production, infrastructure in terms of building, you know, hard infrastructure, putting people to work in green jobs, but the understanding of what a green job is very narrow and very much based on the types of work that men tend to do. So one of the key things that we argued for in our feminist Green New Deal is that we need to make care jobs green jobs and think about investing in giving, you know, better pay, better conditions, and more jobs within the sectors like childcare, education, elder care, health care, that are actually very low carbon, very low impact, but very high social welfare impact. For every £1 invested in the care sector, you will create 3 jobs and create only a third of the amount of carbon that you would for that same pound being invested in the construction industry. These visions of a Green New Deal are very technocratic, very economistic. They are not, you know, they are dreamt up by think tanks and experts, and they haven't been put to the test of a democratic process and a diverse people, diverse voices, diverse interests being a part of a conversation to imagine what a green society would look like. And I think that in order to sort of get people to join that process of transitioning out of a fossil fuel-based capitalist system, you have to provide a much better and more holistic understanding of a quality of life that includes more time to care, more time to take care of the environment, more time to take care of children. So those are some of the main points that I would highlight from a feminist Green New Deal. First of all, I would say that I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to draw a distinction between feminist urbanism and ecofeminist urbanism. Feminist urbanism has been around for a very long time, and there are some really famous, successful examples of feminist urbanism. So everyone will point to Vienna as a really good example, where there's been a long tradition of feminists in city planning with visions about how to create communities that are good for, particularly for women. Feminists took over city planning in Barcelona. They created things like super blocks, where again, it was a sort of idea of the 15-minute city where people can get around really easily using public transport. But I think from an ecofeminist perspective, there's a step further that needs to be taken, which is to include concerns about the environment. Feminists have often been concerned about things like male violence, trying to protect women, trying to make women's all sort of existing roles easier. Ecofeminists have sort of thought, well, what are the trade-offs there? If we sort of think about making women equal with men, then we're just keeping the same system kind of going, the same kind of capitalist system. It's a very liberal idea about change. Ecofeminism has never been liberal. It's always been extremely anti-liberal, and has critiqued capitalism, colonialism, and racism, and speciesism from the beginning. So it's never like about putting women first without thinking about the implications for the natural environment. Parks also be, at the same time as being safe, can they also be good for pollinators? Could they be places to grow food? Could they be places where people can have a better relationship to the natural world, as well as potentially through community initiatives like gardening, for example, better relationships between themselves, and therefore create a kind of a safer and more, sort of a better community where people know each other. To start with, I don't think we can actually talk about ecofeminist cities yet. I think ecofeminist cities don't yet exist. It's an idea, it's an imaginary, it's potentially an approach. So I think that there's a need for networks of ecofeminist planners, ecofeminist activists who understand the importance of cities, because they don't all, to form a way of pressurizing and advocating for these changes. And there aren't many examples. I mean, if you go online and try to find the ecofeminist city, you won't find anything but arguments in favor of, or this is what it would look like. Decades and decades of climate change negotiations at the COPs and so forth show that change is too slow at the national level or even the international level. But at the city, things are possible. The key is to be inclusive as possible, to imagine, how do you overcome barriers within traditional politics that have tended to, favor a certain type of person. So someone who has more confidence, perhaps has the privilege of being white and male and educated, etc. So feminizing politics in a way is to find different approaches, different models of deliberation. So more group consensus based. In addition to that, the way decisions are often made tend to be focused around measurement, measuring costs and benefits, how much is it going to cost, putting kind of growth and those types of traditional ways of measuring progress are kind of favored, whereas other ways of measuring outcomes could be employed, like does it increase the welfare of the population, the well-being of the population? Are we giving people more time to use rather than just more money in their pocket? This separation, which is necessary for capitalism, is the kind of like fundamental challenge that all feminists have been talking about. And this brings it all back to the question of care, where we started. And that's as I said, one of the biggest demands from an ecofeminist perspective is to recenter care and to show that there would not be a public sphere, there would not be production or a capitalist economy or a state if we didn't have that foundation of social reproduction, which is a short short form for social reproduction is care, and care work, and the care that needs to be done to ensure that all dependent life, humans and non-human, are looked after and can flourish. So the challenge remains through activism, through advocacy of feminist policymakers, feminist think tanks and so forth, to show the value of that work.
Thank you very much. We made the entire loop. Solving the